Hello everyone, my name is Elisa Webb and I teach at Ohlone Community College in Fremont, California, and today I'm going to discuss the 7 actions that improved my online teaching. When I first started as an online instructor, I realized right away that I was having problems connecting with my students. As a face-to-face instructor, I had no problems at all, but as an online instructor, there was a disconnect. And I also wondered if my students were developing a sense of community with one another by connecting with one another. I also realized that I was having problems developing online discussions. Motivating my students well was a problem. I was wondering how to write a very good topic that was real and promoted substantive discussion. And then I also realized that administering my online class effectively was not going so well, particularly in using the online gradebook. So what did I do to improve? Well, the first thing I did was I did talk to colleagues. I talked to fellow educators, and I think most of us realize that talking to others really helps because that other instructor, that other professor has been through it, and so they can help a lot. I also read books about online teaching. I also read some blogs. But most importantly, I took some classes, and I took some classes with @ONE and went through the certification process. So these next 7 actions were mostly derived from my online experience at @ONE. One of the first things I learned in class to connect with my students was to use a Google YouTube video that I could use as a weekly announcement or as part of my text-based weekly announcement. And I realized that I needed the equipment to record the video, so I went out and got that. I realized that I needed an account at YouTube. I went out and got that. And then I learned to caption the videos. And below, you can see an example of an announcement that I gave my students, along with the URL, telling them, go here and you will hear about what you're supposed to do this week in class. This is a snippet of that same video, and I'm going to play just the first 15 seconds for you.
Hello everyone. I hope that you had a great weekend and that you enjoyed time with friends and family. I have good news for many of you. For this one time only, I have extended the due date for our Word documents to Thursday, September 29th by midnight.
Okay, so that was a Google YouTube video, and noticed you may not have noticed, but it was captioned. And what was good about it, I think, is that my students actually wrote me back and said, hi, Elisa, thank you very much for using that video because I made a connection with you. I actually got to know who it was that was presenting this class to me. Another way that I connected with students and helped students to connect with one another is that I learned to include icebreaker discussions at the beginning of the semester. As an added bonus, students do connect with one another when we give icebreaker discussions. And one of the discussion board favorites that I used was having the students state 1 myth and 2 facts about themselves. This is an example of a discussion that I started. This was, by the way, an icebreaker suggested by some of the @ONE instructors. And I had a lot of fun with it. My students had a ton of fun with it. And I start the ball rolling by saying, you know, welcome to class. I'm happy to get to know you. And why don't you go ahead and do this 2 statements of fact about yourself and 1 myth. And then later on, in a subsequent email to them, I said, we'll do the big reveal later on. And we had a lot of fun with it. So I recommend it. This isn't the only one, of course. There are many icebreakers that you can use. To connect with students, I also learned to include captioned videos of my lectures or my demonstrations that I would do. We all know that captioned videos take a great deal of time to produce, but I think they're well worth the effort. The reason is that students hear your voice as the educator, as the teacher, and it's targeted to them by you as the instructor. I think on the whole, students want to hear from you as the educator. They want to hear your opinion. They want to hear what you have to say about your content that you are presenting to the class. So while they take a great deal of time to produce, I think they are on the whole better, my personal opinion. This is an example of a captioned video that I made of an Excel lesson. You can see below the captioning, and I'm using very personal tone of voice, so to speak. It's more conversational. I'm going to click on the sum button, come up to the formula bar. So it's more conversational. I think it's a little more personalized, and I think that when we give them videos that publishers make, I think it's good, but I don't think it's quite personal, and I don't think there's as much of a connection. To improve my online discussions, I learned that I needed to include open-ended discussion topics, ones that students offer an opinion about. Ethics questions were particularly popular in the classes that I've taught. For instance, talking about child labor or genetically engineered food, something like that. Something that the student would go research and come back and talk about it. I also realized that assigning a problem that requires a solution was also very popular as a discussion topic. And in one class, I broke students up into a group of 4 with information about a company, a hypothetical company. And then they were told to decide what employee to terminate based upon a case study. Because we all know that nowadays a lot of corporations do downsize. So that was just an example of a discussion topic that actually students had a good time with, good fun. The LMS, by the way, the Learning Management System, can help students, can help you break students into groups. So if you haven't used that part of the LMS, I recommend using it because I found it very useful for me. Also, to improve my online discussions, I learned to make sure that I included a rubric that was that students could understand easily and that was accessible with the discussion. I know some of you might be sitting there thinking, well, accessible. Well, what I mean is that for a while, I was placing my rubrics in a different area, in a content area, and labeling it rubrics. I needed to have placed it right with the discussion so that students could then get right to it, right? So it was one of those things like, oh, duh, I need to do that. So making sure that the rubric is clearly defined, and then also is placed right with that discussion is very important. This is an example of a discussion rubric that was used in one of the @One classes. I modified it, but you can see that I'm looking at 3 categories in that discussion. I'm looking at the quality of the posting, I'm looking at the quantity of the postings, and I'm looking at the timeliness of the posts. There are 2 other columns there telling what is unsatisfactory, what would be deemed unsatisfactory in that discussion posting, and what would be considered credit. Another thing that I learned to improve my online discussions was that I learned to comment extensively on the first 2 discussions of each student. Now, that took a great deal of time. I can't tell you how much time it took, but I was quite shocked by the number of students that wrote me back to say thank you. It wasn't just 1 or 2. There were many. And I didn't expect it, quite honestly. I really didn't. But I learned a great deal from doing that. These were private comments to them directly. They were not placed on the blackboard. I mentioned the good and the strong points, and I mentioned what needed to be improved, if indeed there was something to be improved. I praised or encouraged postings to other students. For instance, if that student made a good posting to another, I might say, that was a very good way that you talked to that other student. It was very, very respectful, good. If it needed maybe some toning down, I might mention that too. I think that these comments helped motivate the students because the subsequent discussions were much better. So it was something that I decided that I'm going to do from now on. And so on the other classes that I actually had more discussions, I did this. And sometimes I couldn't get to both initial first 2 discussions, but I at least did it on the first one. And again, I had some good results. The LMS does allow comments in the form grade text box. And this is an example I think I mentioned earlier that on the initial comments that I made, the extensive comments, I used the email system. But on the subsequent discussions, I used the comment box in the form grade and then just made some sort of cursory comment about it and placed them here. You can see in this form grade text box that the discussion rubric was actually kind of fitted, so to speak, here. You can see that I'm looking for the quantity of posting. I'm grading on that, and then the quantity of posting here and the quality of posting here. So, and then of course the timeliness of the post would have been underneath this if we had scrolled down. So the Blackboard 9.1 discussion form grade text box really helped me and enabled me to make these comments to the students. To improve administering the class, on the whole, to make it better, I learned that I needed to set up a weighted total column and display it as a running total in the gradebook of the LMS. Now, I know that some of you are thinking, well, didn't you give them the grades? Well, yes, I did. They could always see the assignment grade, but they didn't necessarily see the grade in the class right then. And so what I noticed was that students would go and they would look at their grade, and it would either motivate them to work harder or then to talk to me about what they needed to do to improve. It also saves time in that student asking the question, what's my grade in this class? And it has virtually eliminated that. And therefore, it's eliminated that time for me to sit down with that student or to respond by email or to write something else that was extensive to show the student how to figure out their grade in the class. I teach introductory classes, so I have this question often when I don't set up that weighted total column used in the LMS. Here's an example of Blackboard's weighted column, Blackboard 9.1. You can note here that the schema does show both the percentage and the letter grade, but you don't have to do both in Blackboard. You can do one or the other. And as I said, I found that this was very useful for my students. So in summary, the 7 actions that I took, by the way, these weren't all of them, of course, but these were the ones that I saw gave me more bang for the buck, so to speak. Help my students and also help me. To improve connections from teacher to student and from student to student, I learned that I needed to produce videos, uploaded to YouTube and used as weekly announcements or in place of the weekly announcement. To use icebreakers, to produce videos about the course content, my lectures or my demonstrations. I also learned to improve my online discussions, that I needed to write open-ended or problem-solving discussion topics, to include a discussion rubric, and to comment extensively on each student's first 2 postings, outlining what was good and what was not so good about the posting. And then to improve my administration in general of the online class, I learned that I really needed to set up right away that weighted total column, calculating it as a running total, and then that virtually eliminated those questions about what's my grade in this class. Thank you.
Great job, Elisa. After implementing those 7 steps, what kinds of response did you get back from the students? Obviously, we heard a little bit about they were happy that you added those videos because they felt connection.
Mm-hmm.
What other things did you notice, either in student performance, the community in your class?
I think the community definitely increased because the students could talk to one another, or once they saw me, they felt more inclined to talk to me, to write me emails, or to respond to me on the discussion board. And I think that anytime that we if the student can see our face, hear our words, or read our words, that increases that connection. And anytime we connect with our students, I think, this is my personal opinion, I think they want to learn, and I think they make more of an effort. I think that's what I noticed when I was teaching face-to-face. I had no problems in building a rapport with my students. And I had a teacher years ago tell me, she said, well, yeah, it is true. Students, if they like you, you know, they'll tend to learn more. They'll tend to connect with you more and tend to work harder. And I think I believe what she said. And so that's why when I started teaching online, I realized, gee, I'm not connecting like I do in face-to-face. I'm not getting to know that person. I'm not getting to know what they need to do to improve and help themselves have success in the class. So that was the big bombshell for me when I realized that with online I can still do that, but I really have to make effort. So I have to do the Google videos. I have to make sure I do these icebreakers. I have to make a connection. So did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment that speaks to exactly what you're saying, is that in my online class I do the same thing. I do like a weekly video announcement for my students. And this past semester I got sick and I was out for a week. And so I posted just a text announcement saying, I'm sorry, I'm extremely ill. There's not going to be a video announcement this week. And immediately I got emails from almost every single student in my class like, oh my God, I hope you're okay. I'm, you know, all this stuff, which before I've had other instances of things like that happening, and I'd maybe get one or two emails from students that I'd, worked with, but never the same kind of reaction as I got from students in my class where I had that video up every single week. So I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Okay.
So I think you're completely on the right track with that. And we have several colleagues now at our college who are doing Skype calls at the beginning of the course with students. And they're having the students sign up for a time to meet with them. And they started, a couple of people, one person in particular started with one appointment with one student, and that took a lot of time. So now what she's doing is she's doing groups. They have to sign up. There's 5 slots for each 10 minutes, and then 5 students come in, and she thought she was saving herself time. And what she found out was happening was those 5 students were also meeting each other. So she does a 10-minute interview with them at the beginning of class, the beginning of the course, with 5 students in each appointment, and they're connecting with each other. And that was, I think it's a very cool idea. So you could take it one step further. But what I think is really great about what you're doing is that the same person, we Skyped her into our academy about a year ago on a screen as a student who did their whole program online. And what she said was, the one thing I miss is that, and I think we spoke about this earlier, is that I don't have any college friends. My friends who went to college have college friends, but I'm taking my whole program online, and I don't have any college friends. And so I want you to build in more opportunities for us to be connected. And she called it interconnectedness. And that's what she thought we should do. And that's what you're doing. And I just wanted to commend you on that and have you, think more about, if you're passionate about doing that, that you continue to add things and add places in your course. And I wanted to ask you how you set up your groups. What made you do discussions in groups? What were the questions and how did you set those up?
I used the grouping system in Blackboard to allow the students to sign up, and then I posted a question, a discussion posting for them, and then allowed them to just meet and then connect that way.
What were the questions why did you do them in groups?
Mainly because of that one where where I was asking for them to solve a problem, where they had to talk with one another about solving a problem. And one of the examples was, giving the students a hypothetical company that they're working for, they're managers, have employees that the company's going to have to downsize. One employee is going to have to be terminated. Based upon the case study, which employee would you choose to terminate and why? And that required the students, of course, to talk about what's great about this employee, what's great about this employee, what's not so great. How do we make a decision as a panel to downsize, which employee to terminate? And I thought that was a good use of groups because it allowed students to talk, to figure out a problem, to figure out a solution to a problem. And so that's what I used. And there were some other ones that I do too.
It's excellent.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment about your Excel video.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that because, as a non-business applications person, I think of Excel as something really dry and boring.
Mm-hmm.
But the vocabulary that you used to talk about setting up your little spreadsheet was so inviting, and it made you even want to do it. So I thought that was really nice.
Thank you for mentioning it. I have had students that asked me to put that video like on iTunes, to put it something or to do something with the Excel and I think it's not that my videos are better than the publisher. They certainly aren't. They're not nearly as professional. But I think it's the connection with me, with the instructor, and using that personal conversation. Because, yes, do this. And we talk, and I think that is as important as educators, that we need to get to a point where we are talking to our students respectfully, that we're talking to them as really almost peers, in the sense that I'm helping you learn, you're helping me learn, we're working together to succeed. And I, as the educator, want to do as much as I possibly can for you. So I think that's the approach, and that's why I like doing the videos, although they certainly, as I said, they're certainly not nearly as good as the professional videos. But thank you for the comment.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you.